Liam Robertson slumped heavily into the narrow airplane seat, his broad shoulders pressing uncomfortably against the armrests while his long legs, stretched awkwardly before him, fought for space in the cramped aisle. At 6'2" and a solid 230 pounds, he felt like a giant stuffed into a child's toy box. The hum of the engines vibrated through the thin walls as the plane sliced through the sky, 5 hours into a grueling 9-hour flight. His body ached. His knees jammed against the seat in front of him, and his mind churned with restless exhaustion. If he'd known it would be this torturous, he might have hesitated before accepting the job, maybe opted for a train or even a slow boat to anywhere but here. Yet, deep down, he knew this discomfort was a small price to pay for escape. The job promised him 10 months, maybe even 14, away from the wreckage of his life back home. Distance felt like a lifeline, a chance to let the chaos he'd left behind untangle itself without him. His lawyer, sharp and dependable, could handle the fallout. That's why he paid her the big bucks, why he trusted her to sift through the mess while he disappeared into the horizon. He shifted again, the seat creaking under his weight, and gave up on finding a position that didn't feel like punishment. Resigned, he pressed his forehead against the cool, smudged window, the glass fogging slightly with his breath. His eyes fluttered shut, chasing sleep, though he knew it wouldn't come easy. The memories were waiting, lurking like shadows in the corners of his mind, ready to pounce the moment he let his guard down. And there it was, the day his world shattered, seeping into his thoughts like a slow poison. That day had started badly and only got worse. Liam had dragged himself home from work later than usual, his tie loosened, his shirt wrinkled from hours of sitting through meetings that went nowhere. It was one of those days where every task felt like wading through mud, nothing clicked, nothing landed. He'd been the golden boy at the company, the one everyone expected to climb the ladder with ease, his charm and ambition lighting the way. But that day, the shine dulled. Briefings flopped, clients grumbled, and every decision he made seemed to backfire. By the time the CEO summoned him for a late meeting, Liam's ego was already bruised. The offer came like a slap, a job he didn't want, a lifeline he didn't ask for, take it or start over somewhere else. He had a few days to decide, but the weight of it pressed down on him as he drove home, his mood dark and sour, ready to unload it all on Sarah, his wife of 19 years. The tension between them had been simmering for weeks, ever since that damned party. He'd felt it in the air, the way her eyes avoided his, the clipped edge to her words. Pulling into the driveway, he braced himself for her reaction. She'd be furious about the job offer, he knew it. And he wasn't sure he had the energy to fight her tonight. But when he stepped through the door, the scene that greeted him wasn't anger, it was something far worse. Sarah stood in the entryway, radiant in a sleek black dress that hugged her curves, her hair swept up in a way that made her look like she belonged somewhere glamorous, not in their quiet suburban home. A bright, defiant smile curved her lips as she adjusted an earring, her movements deliberate, almost performative. "Sarah, where are you going?" he asked, his voice rough with exhaustion. "We need to talk, something's happened." She barely glanced at him, her fingers brushing over her purse as she replied, "I'm going out, Liam. On a date. Don't wait up." The words hit him like a punch to the chest, knocking the air from his lungs. His world tilted, the edges blurring as he struggled to process what she'd said. A date? After 19 years together? After everything they'd built? He stared at her, dumbfounded, as she turned to face him fully, her smile vanishing, replaced by a cold, steely resolve that chilled him to the bone. "What are you talking about?" "What date?" he stammered, his voice rising with a mix of disbelief and desperation. "I've decided I'm not happy," she said, her tone sharp and unyielding, like a blade slicing through the fragile threads of their marriage. "Not with my life, not with you. I'm doing something different, something for me. It starts tonight, with this date. Her words were a declaration, bold and unapologetic, and they left Liam reeling. A date with who? He demanded, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. Why are you acting like this? You've been awful to me for weeks, and now this? What's going on with you? Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of irritation crossing her face as she adjusted the strap of her dress. A male friend asked me out. We're going to dinner, maybe dancing. I'm doing this because I want to, Liam. I don't need your permission, your approval, or to justify it to you. I didn't make dinner, figure it out yourself. Order something, go out, I don't care. Her dismissiveness stung, each syllable a fresh wound. He took a step closer. His voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. Wait, is this some kind of joke? I've had the worst day, Sarah, and now you're pulling this? It's not funny. Stop right there, she snapped. Her gaze locking onto his with an intensity that made him flinch. This isn't a joke. I'm going out with Robert Lindstrom. He asked, I said yes. That's it. The name landed like a grenade between them, exploding the last vestiges of his composure. Robert Lindstrom, the smug bastard from the party, the one she draped herself over while Liam watched. Humiliated, from across the room. You're going out with that jerk, he shouted, his voice cracking. The one you were all over at the party? You're throwing me, us, away for him? Sarah's lips tightened into a thin line, her expression hardening. It doesn't matter what you think of him, Liam. It matters what I think. I like him enough to spend time with him. This has nothing to do with our marriage, so drop the drama. You're still my husband, and that's not changing, I'm just seeing a friend. Her words were a twisted paradox, infuriatingly calm. As if she could rewrite the rules of their life without consequence. Liam's chest heaved, his mind racing to keep up. Are you serious? I get no say in this? You're telling me I don't matter? That you can just drop this on me and I'm supposed to nod and take it? After 3 weeks of your tantrums, blaming me for everything, now you're dating other men? No, Sarah, I'm done. I don't know what game you're playing, but I've had enough. Marriage takes two, when one walks out, it's over. You leave for him, we're finished. She rolled her eyes. A gesture so dismissive it felt like a slap. Stop being ridiculous. You're acting like a child. I'm going, don't wait up. With that, she turned on her heel. The click of her shoes echoing on the hardwood as she strode out the door. It slammed shut behind her, the sound reverberating through the empty house like a gunshot. Liam stood frozen. His ears ringing as the rumble of her car faded into the night. His wife, his Sarah, had walked out to be with another man. How had it come to this? Where had this brazen, unrecognizable woman come from? He didn't know how long he lingered there, the shadows lengthening across the walls as dusk crept in, but eventually, something snapped. Almost mechanically. He descended to the basement, his footsteps heavy on the creaking stairs. He hauled up every suitcase they owned, big ones, small ones. Even the dusty duffel bag from their early years, and dragged them to the bedroom. The sight that greeted him stopped him cold. Their bed, once a sanctuary of shared laughter and quiet nights, was a tangled mess, the dark sheets stained with evidence he couldn't unsee. His stomach churned as he fumbled for his phone, snapping photos with shaking hands, proof, if he needed it, that his marriage was beyond saving. Rage surged through him, hot and blinding, as he tore the sheets from the mattress, hurling them against the wall in a furious cascade. Then he packed clothes, books, anything that was his. He stuffed them into bags with a frantic energy, clearing out the closet and drawers until nothing of him remained. He paused in his office. the air thick with the scent of old wood and paper, and opened the safe. His passport, social security card, half the certificates of deposit, he took what was his, leaving the rest behind. Then he pulled out his handgun, its cold weight grounding him as he set it on the desk beside 2 boxes of ammo and 4 magazines. The safe door hung open, a silent testament to his unraveling life. Sitting at his desk, he stared at his trembling hands, the adrenaline fading into a hollow ache. An hour passed, maybe more, before he reached for his phone again. "Mr. Avery? It's Liam. Sorry to call so late. Is that job offer still on the table?" His voice was steady, but barely. The CEO's warm tone crackled through the line. "Yes, Liam, it is. Are you taking it?" "I am, sir. I'm packing now. I'd have waited till morning, but I've got legal and banking stuff to sort out the next few days. Take the time you need, Liam. I'm sorry for the rush. Your wife, will this be an issue for her?" "No, sir," Liam said, a bitter edge to his words. "Trust me, it won't be a problem." The job was his escape hatch, a chance to leave the pain behind. And he wasn't looking back. Liam stood in the dimly lit living room, the weight of his decision pressing down on him like a storm cloud ready to burst. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke into the phone, each word laced with a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. "I'm leaving Sarah. It's a divorce. I won't be around for most of it, too much to handle, too many pieces to pick up. I need someone I can trust to take care of my side of things. Lillian, I know you and Sarah are friends. But I'm begging you, please, I need your help. Can you do this for me?" His chest tightened as he waited, the silence on the other end stretching out like an eternity. He could almost picture Lillian on the other side, her brow furrowing in that familiar way she had when she was weighing something heavy. On the other end of the line, Lillian's voice came through. Steady and warm, cutting through the fog of his despair. "God, Liam, of course I'll help you. Whatever you need, I'm here. When can you swing by my office? Tomorrow work for you?" Her tone carried a quiet strength, a lifeline he desperately needed to cling to. Liam rubbed his temple, his mind already racing through the next day's obligations. "I've got to hit the bank as soon as it opens, should take about 2 hours, give or take. Any time after 10 o'clock should be good. How about we grab lunch at 11 o'clock? Mario sound okay? We can talk things over there, then head to your office. Does that work?" "Yeah, that's perfect," Lillian replied, her voice softening with reassurance. "Thank you, Liam. I'll see you tomorrow. And please, don't do anything rash before then, okay?" He let out a small, bitter chuckle, the kind that barely masked the ache inside. "I won't. See you tomorrow, Lillian. Good night." He hung up. The phone slipping from his hand onto the couch as he sank into the cushions. The quiet of the house pressed in around him, thick and suffocating, amplifying the storm brewing in his chest. But the next call, he knew it would be a punch to the gut. He had to tell Abby. Abby was his pride and joy, only 18 but already a junior at Berkeley. A prodigy who'd skipped 2 grades in high school and landed a full ride for her master's. She was brilliant, fierce, and independent, qualities he'd always admired. But now, as he dialed her number, his stomach churned with dread. He knew this news would shatter something between them, and the thought of her voice turning cold made his hands tremble. "Hey, honey, it's your dad," he started, forcing a lightness into his tone that he didn't feel. The line crackled faintly, 3,000 miles separated them, and it felt like more. Abby's response was calm, almost too calm. "I've been expecting your call, Dad. I figured I'd hear from you sooner, though." He blinked, caught off guard. "Oh? Why's that?" Her sigh carried a weight far beyond her years. I know, Dad. I know what Mom's doing tonight. I know why she's doing it. Liam's heart stuttered. You do? How could you possibly? She told me, Abby cut in. Her voice firm but tinged with something softer, pity, maybe. We've been talking about this for months. Months? The word exploded from him, raw and disbelieving. Talking about what, exactly? What's this right you think she has? The right to toss our marriage out the window like it's nothing? Dad, you're overreacting, Abby said, her tone sharpening. Stop being so dramatic. This isn't the 1950s. Mom doesn't owe you an explanation for what she wants out of life. She doesn't need your permission to see other people, she doesn't even have to tell you. It's not about the marriage anymore. Women today, all of us, we get to explore who we are, married or not. Marriage is just a practical thing now, sharing bills, splitting rent. Thinking it's some sacred, lifelong commitment? That's outdated. It's immature. Liam's jaw tightened, his pulse pounding in his ears. Wait a damn minute. Am I seriously getting a lecture on marriage from an 18-year-old who's never even had a real relationship? Is that what's happening here? Yeah, Dad, it is, she shot back, unflinching. Get over it. Marriage isn't some holy grail anymore, it's a financial arrangement. No woman should feel like she's chained to a man because of it. I didn't learn this at school. If that's what you're thinking. I've felt this way for years, and being at Berkeley just made it clearer. I love you, Dad, but you need to back off. What you did to Mom at that party. That was messed up. She had every right to be with that guy, and you humiliating her like that, you crossed a line. Humiliating her? Liam's voice rose, incredulity bleeding into anger. Are you on something, Abby? Do you even hear yourself? Trying to understand what's happening to our family is bothering her? What about my choices? Are you saying I get no say in my own marriage? No, Dad, you don't, she said flatly. That's the old way of thinking. Those days are done. I'm on Mom's side here, she told me everything, asked what I thought about it all, before and now. I told her I'm fine with it. I'm rooting for her. Accept it and move on. Don't make this a fight. Mom can do what makes her happy, and all you're doing is pissing her off by dragging this out. Her choice doesn't have to ruin your life, just let her live hers, and you live yours. It's that simple. Liam's throat burned as her words sank in. Well, looks like you've picked your team. Good to know how little I mean to the women in my life. He ended the call abruptly, his hands shaking as he turned off the phone and tossed it onto the coffee table. The sadness he'd felt earlier about losing Sarah morphed into a sharp, searing anger. He grabbed his laptop, his movements jerky and deliberate, and logged into their finances. With a few clicks. He removed Sarah from his credit cards, she had her own anyway, let her figure it out. He updated his passwords, paid off the balances with their joint savings, then split the rest down the middle. Transferring half to his personal account. The checking account got the same treatment. His fingers flew over the keys as he secured his email too, locking her out of every corner of his digital life. The house was nearly paid off, so he didn't bother with that, she couldn't sell it or borrow against it without him, and she could deal with the last few payments until the divorce was final. Their cars were paid for too, no loose ends there. He slammed the laptop shut, gathered his chargers, tablet, phone, and all their financial records from the office. It took him an hour to load his SUV, Tetris ing boxes and bags so he could still see out the back. When he stepped outside and closed the front door, he didn't lock it. This wasn't his home anymore. He didn't care what happened to it or anything left inside. Liam didn't bother with a local hotel. He drove 40 minutes out of town, the highway stretching endlessly before him. until he spotted a National Hotel glowing faintly off the exit. He checked in, hauling everything into his room. For days here, no point leaving stuff in the car. Sleep didn't come, though. Sarah's dismissive smirk and Abby's cutting words looped in his mind, a relentless echo that kept him staring at the ceiling until dawn crept through the blinds. At 5 a.m., he gave up. Dressed in yesterday's clothes, he grabbed his briefcase and drove back to the house, a gnawing suspicion pulling him there. He rolled up at 6:10. The early light casting long shadows across the driveway. Sarah's car was gone, neither in the garage nor parked out front. The front door hung slightly ajar, lights blazing inside. He stepped in. His boots heavy on the hardwood, and took in the silence. They'd made their choices, Sarah and Abby, selfish, cruel choices that ripped through him without a shred of remorse. Fine. He had choices too. He slipped off his wedding ring, the metal cold against his skin, and set it on the counter next to the coffee pot, a quiet, final farewell. Then he walked out for good. The bank was his first stop. As soon as the doors opened, he confirmed the transfers, closed his accounts, and walked out with a cashier's check, cashing out his CDs at a loss he didn't care to calculate. At a different bank. He opened a new account using Lillian's office address and number, clean slate. Next, he hit a dealership, sold his car for less than it was worth, and rented a sedan for the week. The check from the sale went straight into his new account. By the time he pulled into Mario's parking lot, exhaustion clung to him like damp clothes, but Lillian was already there. Waiting at a corner table, her sharp eyes softening when she saw him. Over a lunch he barely touched, pasta that sat heavy and untouched on his plate, he spilled everything. The party 3 weeks ago. Where Sarah had drifted away from him mid-laugh to cling to some guy named Lindstrom. The weeks of venom-soaked arguments that followed. Last night's final blow. Lillian's face darkened with anger as she listened, her fork pausing midair. They finished quickly and headed to her office, where he handed over a hefty check and a stack of documents. So, you think Abby's the one pushing Sarah into this? She asked, leaning back in her chair. Liam rubbed his eyes, the weight of it all pressing harder. Honestly, it feels like it's all Abby's doing. She said they've been talking about it for months. I can't wrap my head around it, my own daughter and my wife, tearing me apart like this. Why? Sarah didn't drop a single hint before that night. We were fine, laughing, singing in the car on the way to the party. Then she just walked away. Stuck to Lindstrom like glue. I don't even know if she knew him before. These past 3 weeks. She's been vicious. Every conversation turned into a screaming match. Last night, when she left, Lillian, you should have seen her face. Cold as ice. Lillian reached across the desk. Her hand resting lightly on his. I'm here, Liam. What do you need me to do? I need a divorce, he said, voice steady now, resolute. No question about it. I swung by the house this morning at 6:10, she wasn't there, hadn't been all night. So yeah, divorce. Adultery too, if we can prove it. You know someone who can dig up the evidence? I do, she nodded, her expression grim. It'll cost. Though. I don't care. I want to hit her where it hurts, legally. She was with some guy in our bed yesterday, probably Lindstrom. I've got proof. He powered on his phone. Ignoring the missed calls from Abby and 3 texts from Sarah, and pulled up photos he'd taken that morning, the bed unmade, sheets tangled, a stranger's jacket slung over the headboard. He sent them to Lillian, who winced as she scrolled through. What else do you need from me? He asked, leaning forward. Lillian's gaze softened but stayed firm. I need a new will. I'm cutting Sarah and Abby out completely, ironclad. And I want you to have power of attorney, full control. You're the only one I trust, Lillian. Can you handle that? I can, she said quietly. Her voice thick with understanding. Liam, if she did this at your house yesterday, it's not a one-time thing. Women don't bring men home unless they're sure of it. We can wire the place, audio, video. My guy can set it up. We'll need a key and any alarm codes. He slid his house key across the desk. Haven't checked her texts yet, should I? Do it, she urged, leaning in. The first text had come at 10 p.m. last night, go to bed, Liam. I won't be home tonight. Change the sheets, or don't. Up to you, the next, at 4:30 a.m. Spending the rest of the week with Robert. Don't call me. I want this, your meddling isn't welcome, the last, just half an hour ago, Liam, stop. This is my life now, He stared at the screen. The words blurring as his anger solidified into something cold and unbreakable. Sarah had made her choice. Abby had made hers. Now it was his turn. The air in the house felt thick with tension as Liam stood in the living room, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. The screen glowing with the string of messages that had just turned his world upside down. His chest heaved with a mix of fury and disbelief as he shouted, "Son of a..." The words echoed off the walls. Sharp and raw, cutting through the stillness. Lillian, his longtime friend and confidant, turned toward him, her brow furrowing with concern. "What is it, Liam?" she asked. Her voice steady but laced with unease. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he jabbed at his phone with trembling fingers, forwarding the incriminating texts to her. Each tap felt like a small act of defiance, a way to offload the weight of betrayal that pressed down on him. "Looks like you've got the rest of the week to sneak your guy into the house," he said bitterly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I should probably stick around, huh? Just in case one of the nosy neighbors spots you too. We could get it done tonight if you're up for it, shouldn't take long. I'll call him now." He paced the room, his boots thudding against the hardwood floor. His mind racing with images of Sarah and this stranger defiling the space he'd once called home. Lillian watched him carefully, her hazel eyes narrowing as she absorbed the situation. "Are you going to reply to any of those texts?" she asked, nodding toward his phone. "No," Liam snapped, tossing the device onto the couch as if it burned him. "What's the point?" "She's made up her mind." He ran a hand through his dark, disheveled hair, his jaw clenching tight enough to make the muscles twitch. "What about your voicemails? Are they from Abby?" He shrugged. A hollow gesture that carried the weight of his exhaustion. "No voicemails. Just a bunch of missed call notices from her." His voice softened slightly at the mention of his daughter. But the bitterness quickly crept back in. Abby, his little girl, once his pride and joy, now felt like a stranger, complicit in this unraveling mess. Lillian hesitated, then ventured, "Your property." "Liam. Did you sell your car this morning?" "Yeah," he muttered, exhaling a deep, shuddering sigh that seemed to pull the air from the room. "I did." He sank into an armchair. The leather creaking under his weight, and stared at the ceiling as if it might offer some escape. "I was thinking about letting Sarah keep the house, let her pay it off, live there, whatever. But now? Forget it. She can either buy me out, or we sell the damn thing. I don't care anymore. I'm not handing her a single thing if I can help it. Hell, I want to take as much from her as I possibly can." His words spilled out like venom, each one laced with a festering resentment that had been building for weeks. Lillian leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. Her expression a mix of sympathy and pragmatism. "I can't promise you anything definitive, Liam, but if we can gather enough proof for an adultery case." The court's likely to side with you when it comes to splitting everything. There's also this guy, Lindstrom, right? If we track him down, we could sue him for alienation of affection. For tearing your marriage apart. If he's working with her, we might even have a shot at going after their company. I'll take care of all the groundwork while you're gone. But Liam, she paused. Searching his face, her voice dropping to a quieter, more probing tone. Are you absolutely sure you want to go through with this? That it's not just the anger talking? I need to know this is what you really want. Liam met her gaze, his blue eyes hard and unyielding, like storm clouds ready to break. It's not just anger, Lillian. You've known me for years, you know I don't say things I don't mean. Do it. His tone was resolute, a steel edge cutting through any doubt. This wasn't a fleeting outburst. It was a decision carved into his very core, born from a wound too deep to heal. Lillian studied him for a long moment, her lips pressing into a thin line. She'd seen him through countless highs and lows over the years, but this was different. This wasn't the impulsive rage of a man scorned, it was the cold, calculated resolve of someone who'd been pushed beyond his limits. All right, then, she said finally, nodding. I'll have all the paperwork ready for you to sign tomorrow morning. It'll take about a week before she's served, though. We need time to collect solid evidence, video and audio. That work for you? Fine, Liam replied, his voice flat. I won't be here anyway. Just do whatever you need to. Are you going to tell them you're leaving, Sarah and Abby? Lillian asked, tilting her head slightly. No, he shook his head, a wry, humorless smile tugging at his lips. They don't need to know what I'm up to anymore. Sarah might try to spin it like I'm abandoning her, use it to countersue or something. Hit her with the adultery charge first. I don't need to stick around to watch it play out, do I? No, you don't, Lillian assured him. You've got more than enough reason to move out now. He nodded, then fell silent, his thoughts drifting to the life he was leaving behind. Lillian broke the quiet again. Who do you want to leave your stuff to in your will? Liam shrugged again. A tired, careless motion. I don't care, Lillian. Pick someone, or something, that'll drive Sarah and Abby up the wall. Maybe a big donation to that political party they despise. Just make sure it's airtight. Lillian let out a short, surprised laugh, her eyes glinting with mischief. Oh, that would definitely get under their skin. Consider it done. Good, he said. A faint spark of satisfaction flickering in his chest. I'll meet you at the house at 5. Yeah, I'll be there, she replied, already mentally mapping out the next steps. Meanwhile, across town, Sarah sat at her desk, her eyelids heavy as another yawn escaped her lips. The previous night had been a whirlwind, hours spent tangled up with Robert. The young man who'd ignited something reckless and exhilarating in her. The office hummed around her, a dull backdrop to the vivid memories flashing through her mind. The way Robert's laughter had filled the room, the thrill of sneaking around, the sensation of breaking free from the monotony of her life with Liam. She leaned back in her chair, twirling a pen between her fingers, and let her thoughts linger on why Robert felt so different. It wasn't his skill, he didn't have Liam's quiet confidence or steady hands, but it was the novelty. The rush of the forbidden. Just as Abby had promised it would be. Abby. Sarah's lips curved into a proud smile as she thought of her daughter. That girl had grown into a force of nature, bold, opinionated, unshakable in her convictions. It was Abby who'd planted the seed for this affair, nudging Sarah toward a life unbound by the expectations of her 19-year marriage with Robert. Sarah felt alive again, like a bride on her honeymoon, stealing glances and secret touches under the fluorescent lights of their workplace. They were careful. Of course, neither wanted the gossip mill to catch wind of their tryst, but the danger only heightened the thrill. Sarah reached for her phone, her fingers brushing the cool glass as she pulled up Abby's latest messages. The first one popped up, bright and casual, *, "Hey mom, hope you're having fun. Just talked to dad, it went about as expected. He hung up on me, like I figured he would. He's pissed and complaining, but don't be surprised if he takes off for a few days. He'll crawl back eventually, he's got nowhere else to go. Enjoy yourself, love you, *. The words carried Abby's usual breezy confidence, a reassurance that everything was under control. The second message followed close behind. *, tried calling dad a few times this morning. Think he turned his phone off. No biggie, he just needs time to deal with this shift. Don't stress if you can't get a hold of him. Focus on what you want to do. By the way, I didn't leave any voicemails. Love you, *. Sarah's brow creased slightly as she read it. Liam never turned off his phone, work demanded he stay reachable. She tapped out a quick reply to Abby, then set the device down, her mind churning. He wouldn't respond to her texts, she knew that much. What could he say? That he was hurt? That he disapproved? That was his burden to carry, not hers. She decided then and there to spend the full week with Robert, letting Sunday mark the end of their little escape. She and Liam had built a life together over nearly 2 decades, 19 years of shared mornings, quiet evenings, and the raising of a daughter. She didn't want to throw him away entirely. She still loved him, in her own complicated way. His warm smile, his deep laugh, the way his voice could soothe her even on the worst days, those things lingered in her heart, tugging at her even now. But Abby was right, Liam needed to adapt to this new version of her, this Sarah who craved freedom and refused to be caged. Even if he didn't change, she'd stay with him. He was too good a man, too good a husband and father, to let go completely. She'd keep him in her life, but she wouldn't stop seeking out others when the mood struck. These past 3 weeks without him had left an ache, she missed his presence, his touch, but this journey, this rebellion, felt necessary. Abby had seen it too, clever girl that she was. Sarah yawned again, a sleepy grin spreading across her face as she pictured Robert's boyish charm. A soft chuckle escaped her, echoing faintly in the empty office. That evening, Liam stood in the driveway of his soon-to-be former home, the sky above streaked with the deep oranges and purples of dusk. Lillian arrived right on time. Her car pulling up alongside an unmarked van driven by a wiry man with sharp eyes and a toolbox in hand, the investigator she'd hired. They moved quickly, slipping inside the house like shadows. The investigator set to work, his movements precise and practiced as he installed tiny wireless cameras and microphones in every corner, behind picture frames, under the lip of the kitchen counter, tucked into the crevices of the living room furniture. In less than an hour, the setup was complete. The recording device stashed in the garage alongside a high-speed router to capture every sound and image. He explained the plan in a clipped, professional tone. He'd park a block away each day, download the data in under 10 minutes, and compile it for Lillian's case. Liam watched it all unfold with a detached numbness, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. When the investigator left, he and Lillian headed to a small, dimly lit restaurant a few miles away. The clatter of plates and murmur of conversation filled the space, but Liam barely touched his food, pushing a piece of steak around his plate with his fork. Lillian studied him over the rim of her wine glass. "What's your plan for tonight?" she asked gently. He shrugged, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. "Back to the hotel, I guess. Maybe I'll crack open a bottle of wine, drown out the noise in my head. Who knows when I'll get another chance." Lillian set her glass down, her expression softening. "Do you think there's any way you and Sarah could work through this?" "No," he said flatly, his voice a low rumble. "We can't. I won't live the way she wants me to, and I can't stomach the life she's chasing. Maybe I could have forgiven a one-time fling, given enough time to cool off, but this? Never. He paused, his fork stilling. And Abby, I'm furious with her too. You think I should cut her out completely, legally disown her? Is that what I want? Lillian leaned back, considering his words. Do you have proof she's involved, or is it just what she said? It's her words, he admitted, but I know she's the one who pushed Sarah into this. Sarah wouldn't have done it on her own, Abby's the mastermind here. I can't believe the things coming out of her mouth. If that's how she sees me, then she's not my daughter anymore. I don't like her. And I'm done supporting her. What's your next move, then? Lillian pressed. I've got money automatically deducted from my paycheck every week for Abby's account, covers her food, gas. Whatever she needs. It's a decent chunk, keeps her comfortable. I'm stopping it tomorrow when I update my direct deposit with HR. She can get a job like everyone else, or Sarah can foot the bill. I'm not bankrolling someone who's hell-bent on wrecking my life. Lillian nodded slowly. If we get evidence from the cameras, you could sue Abby for emotional distress too. You might win a judgment against her. And what would that get me? Liam asked, skepticism creeping into his tone. She's got nothing to her name. A judgment means she'd be stuck. Lillian explained. No big purchases, cars, houses, nothing. No credit cards, no loans, not even for school. It'd haunt her until she paid it off or you dropped the case. In this state, you can sue her even if she's living somewhere else. Liam's lips twitched into a grim smile. All right. If you find enough, go for it. Let her learn that choices have consequences. I'm worried about you, Liam, Lillian said suddenly, her voice softening with genuine concern. Where you're going, what you'll be doing, I don't want you getting hurt. He met her gaze. A flicker of warmth breaking through his stony exterior. I've already committed, Lillian. I don't back out of my word. The company's counting on me, unlike my so-called family. That's got to mean something, right? It does, she agreed. Just don't do anything reckless, okay? I couldn't stand losing you. You've been my best friend for nearly 20 years. A faint smile tugged at his lips as memories of their college days, late-night study sessions, bad cafeteria coffee, and endless laughter, flashed through his mind. I'll come back. If only to see you. Maybe we'll finally go dancing or something. You've been nagging me about that for 2 decades, maybe it's time I pay up. You'd better, she teased, her eyes twinkling. I'll hold you to it. He chuckled, a rare sound that felt foreign in his throat. One more thing, what should I do with my extra clothes? Storage, I guess. Keep them at my place. Lillian offered without hesitation. I've got plenty of room. Really? His brows lifted, a spark of relief cutting through the fog. That'd save me some hassle, and guarantee I'll see you again. She laughed, a bright, infectious sound. How's that? I'll probably need new clothes by the time I'm back, he said dryly. Unless you're planning to wear them while I'm gone. What? Me in your old flannels, she shot back, grinning. Maybe I'll send you a picture. Liam laughed, a real, full laugh that shook his shoulders. I'll be waiting for that. Use the new email I gave you. Though, the old one's for work and might get compromised. This one's just for us. Smart move, she said, nodding approvingly. Now, where do you want Sarah served with the divorce papers? At work. To really twist the knife? Yep, he said without hesitation, his voice cold and final. Turn their whole world to ash, every last one of them. That night. Liam didn't drown himself in wine as he'd half-jokingly promised Lillian. He poured a single glass, just enough to dull the jagged edges of his pain, and let the alcohol lull him into a deep, dreamless sleep. When he woke the next morning, he checked his phone out of habit. 2 missed calls from Abby stared back at him, but there were no voicemails, just a single text. Asterisk, you're not answering your phone, Dad. Stop acting like a kid and accept that your life's different now. You're only hurting yourself, and I don't want you hurting more than you need to. This change sucks, but it's happening. Please, Dad, accept it. Talk to me, I can help you through this. I helped Mom, and I want to help you too. Talk to me. Asterisk. Liam's frown deepened as he read her words, each line twisting the knife a little further. She didn't want to see him, not really. She just wanted him to bend. To bow to this new reality she'd helped craft. He set the phone down, his resolve hardening. There was no going back, not for him, not for any of them. The sting of betrayal gnawed at Liam as he stood under the steaming cascade of the shower, the water drumming against his tense shoulders. Just hours ago, he'd pieced together the truth: Sarah, his wife, had transformed under someone else's influence, and now he knew who'd orchestrated it all. His daughter, Abby, had unwittingly let it slip in a text. A casual confession that lit a fire of realization in his chest. He'd left his phone buzzing silently on the counter, the vibrations a faint echo of his unraveling life. And stepped into the bathroom to wash away the grime of the day, and maybe some of the hurt too. Afterward, wrapped in the hotel's thin towel, he grabbed his phone and forwarded Abby's message to Lillian, his lawyer and confidant, with a flick of his thumb. The weight of it all pressed on him, but hunger tugged harder. He descended to the hotel's dining area, the clatter of plates and the hum of morning chatter filling the air. He piled his plate high: crisp bacon, fluffy scrambled eggs, a golden stack of pancakes dripping with syrup, comfort food to steady his shaky resolve. The hotel's bland decor, with its beige walls and generic landscape prints, faded into the background as he ate, his mind churning over the day ahead. At the office, Liam made a beeline for the HR department, his footsteps echoing on the polished tile floor. He needed to adjust some paperwork, bank accounts, beneficiaries, the threads tying him to his old life with Sarah. Nancy Baker, the head of HR, sat behind her desk. Her glasses perched low on her nose, her graying hair pulled into a tight bun. She bombarded him with questions, her voice sharp and insistent, prying into details he wasn't ready to share. Why the change, Liam? Is everything okay? Her pen tapped rhythmically against a notepad, each tap a little jab at his patience. He endured it for a while, jaw clenched, until the dam broke. Look, Nancy, my decisions are private, he snapped, his voice cutting through the room like a whip. Her eyes widened, shock rippling across her lined face, and she fell silent, her pen stilled mid-tap. Regaining her composure, Nancy adjusted her glasses and shifted gears, her tone softening but still clipped. This week's payment already went to your daughter, Liam, but it's the last one. Abby's health and life insurance will hold until the month's end. After that, it's done. Your paycheck this week is still routed to the old account. Next week, it'll switch to the new one. She scribbled on a sticky note, the scratch of her pen loud in the quiet room, and slid it across the desk, his monthly pay in neat, looping cursive. Liam took it, his fingers brushing the paper, and looked up at her, guilt tugging at him. I'm sorry, Nancy, he said, his voice low and rough. I didn't mean to bite your head off. My wife and I, we're splitting. She's got someone new. And Abby's on her side. My ex can cover Abby's expenses now. It's no excuse for barking at you, but I'm sorry. Nancy's stern facade cracked. She stood, her chair scraping back, and crossed the small office in 2 strides. Wrapping her arms around him, she pulled him into a fierce hug, her floral perfume enveloping him. "Oh my God, Liam, I'm so sorry," she murmured. Her voice thick with empathy. "Especially now, if you need anything, you tell me, okay? You know where to find me." He nodded against her shoulder, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks, Nancy. Do I need to ask you to keep it quiet?" She pulled back, her eyes glinting with resolve. "Not a word, except to Mr. Avery, and he'll need a damn good reason to ask." Liam chuckled softly. "I'll be back Friday afternoon, will you be at the briefing?" "Wouldn't miss it," she replied, a grin breaking through. "Casual dress for you, right?" "That's the plan, everything else is packed away." "Got a good lawyer?" she pressed. "The best," he said, confidence firming his tone. "Known her for 20 years. She's got power of attorney while I'm gone, she'll reach out to you." Nancy hugged him again, a quick, warm squeeze, and he left, the weight on his chest a fraction lighter. Next stop, Lillian's office. She greeted him with a brisk nod. Her desk a fortress of folders and legal pads, the faint scent of coffee lingering in the air. She had everything prepared, documents crisp and ready for his signature. They worked through it steadily. The scratch of his pen a metronome to their quiet efficiency. An hour later, he stood, stretching his stiff back, and Lillian met his gaze with a promise. "Friday evening. I'll stick around till you're settled for the night," she said, her voice steady as steel. He nodded, grateful, and headed out to buy a new phone. His old one wouldn't survive where he was headed. Though he kept the number. Why not? It was one less thing to change. Abby texted twice more that day, her words sharp and familiar, echoing her first message. Liam's thumb hovered over the screen. A flicker of anger tightening his grip, but he forwarded them to Lillian without a reply. Responding to Abby, or Sarah, felt pointless, a waste of energy he didn't have. Maybe next Monday. He'd reconsider, but not now. The week blurred by, a whirlwind of meetings and packing, and Friday's briefing arrived fast. The room buzzed with anticipation. Suits and ties replaced by jeans and polos, a big project hung in the balance, one his company was banking on. Liam sat near the front, pride swelling as Mr. Avery clapped him on the shoulder. Trusting him to lead. Still, doubt gnawed at him, 10 months to finish. 14 felt closer to reality. He voiced it, his tone measured, and the room tensed. Faces turned, eyes narrowed. And someone muttered, 14's the absolute max. Liam nodded, swallowing his counterargument. What else could he do? His phone buzzed incessantly during the meeting. 5 sharp jolts against his thigh. Not Lillian, hers was a distinct chime. Abby or Sarah, then. He ignored it, focusing on the projector's glow and the drone of voices. Later. With Lillian at his side, he checked the messages, the screen casting a cold light on his face. Sarah's text hit first, dripping with entitlement, "Since you're still in the house. A little courtesy wouldn't kill you. I'm bringing Robert home Sunday, he's staying with me. Change the sheets if you haven't. I want you to meet him, he deserves to know who he's sharing me with. Even for a moment. Get over your anger and act civil, or I'll evict you. No need to reply, I don't want to hear from you till Sunday. Be there, or you'll regret it. I'm not in the mood for games." Liam's stomach churned, a mix of disbelief and fury. "Is she insane?" he muttered. Lillian gasped beside him, her hand flying to her mouth. "What's she playing at?" "She'll lose it all," he growled. Forwarding the text to Lillian. "Mark my words." Abby's messages followed, a 1-2 punch of exasperation. "Dad, stop acting like this, it's getting old. Do what Mom says and get over yourself. You're lucky she's still willing to stay married. I don't get why you're not being a loving husband. Pick up when I call. Then, enough, Dad. Pout if you want, you're on your own. I tried. It's on you now. Liam sent them to Lillian, his jaw tight. When will you tell them? She asked, her voice low. Soon, he said, eyes narrowing. Sarah's bringing this guy home Sunday, audio and video will catch it. That'll help, right? Perfect, Lillian replied, a sly grin spreading. Call me with updates, and before you serve her. I might be traveling, but I'll be reachable. He handed her a sheet of paper, his handwriting jagged but legible. Have your server read this aloud when they serve them, extra if it's public. Like the HR office. She scanned it, laughing darkly. No charge for this, Liam. We'll do it for free. Saturday dawned gray and sluggish, Liam at the airport by 4:30 a.m., bleary-eyed and tense. Security was a gauntlet, lines snaking endlessly, officers barking orders. He fidgeted, worrying about his packed pistol making it to Georgia. The flight smoothed out his nerves. The hum of engines lulling him into a fitful sleep. On the ground, two figures in crisp uniforms waited, one a hulking man with small, darting eyes and a pinched mouth. The other a woman standing ramrod straight, her hair pulled taut, her face severe yet striking. Her dark, almost black eyes locked onto him, sharp as obsidian. And Liam wondered if she might be Native American, though he knew little to guess for sure. She strode forward, the big man trailing her like a shadow. Mr. Robertson? Liam Robertson? Her grip was iron when he shook her hand. Yes, that's me. I'm Captain Maggie Dumbarton, she said, her voice clipped but warm. This is Sergeant Peter Elliott. We're here to take you to the training site. Luggage? Yeah, and a pistol, I hope it made it. I'm attached to that thing. She didn't blink, just turned toward baggage claim. Her boots clicking on the floor. Pete sidled up, whispering, she's stiff at first, but she's solid. Call me Pete when it's just us. Liam smirked, matching their pace. Though Maggie's stride forced them to hustle. His bags arrived intact, the suitcase with the pistol taped shut, hopefully still armed inside. So, Captain, what's the plan? He asked. Hefting his load. She glanced back, then forward again. Training starts today. 45 minutes to the base, then we'll get you settled. After, it's the firing range, 300 rounds with your pistol. Then clean it. Next, the M4 rifle, another 300 rounds, clean that too. Dinner's in the mess hall, you'll meet your team. Her tone was brisk but oddly soothing. Sounds like a party, Liam quipped. I was afraid I'd be running miles. She shot him a look, half pity, half disdain. Want 12 miles a day? I can arrange it. Pass, he said quickly. Running's not my thing. Noted, she replied. Deadpan. Pete snickered behind him, and Liam groaned under his breath. This was going to be a long ride. The wind howled faintly outside the window, carrying with it the distant murmur of a world Lillian barely noticed anymore. She clutched the phone tighter, her knuckles widening as Liam's voice crackled through the line. Heavy with exhaustion and a bitterness she hadn't heard from him before. Yes, Liam, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? She asked, her words trembling slightly. Not just from guilt but from the weight of what she knew was coming. She could picture him on the other end, pacing some dimly lit room, his broad shoulders slumped under an invisible burden. Yeah. It's fine, Lillian. Don't worry about it, he replied, his tone flat but laced with a quiet resolve that made her chest tighten. He wasn't fine, not even close, but she knew better than to push him when he was like this. Do you have enough to show she's cheating? He asked, cutting straight to the point. his voice sharpening as if summoning the last scraps of his strength. "Oh, yeah, more than enough, my guy," she said, forcing a lightness she didn't feel, hoping it might ease the sting for him. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the cluttered desk in front of her, photos, screenshots, a scribbled note with a license plate number. "I've got everything. Her new boyfriend's car details too. We've got his full info now. I'll file the divorce papers first thing Monday morning when the courthouse opens. Sarah and this Lindstrom creep will both get served, hopefully right around 10:30. Simultaneously, if I can swing it. Oh, and the company's in for it too, turns out Lindstrom works for Sarah's firm. So I'm hitting them all where it hurts." Liam let out a low, approving grunt. "Okay, great. What about Abby?" His voice dipped, a mix of dread and resignation seeping through. And Lillian's stomach twisted. She hated this part most of all. "Yeah, sorry, Liam." Sarah had her phone on speaker during that call. "We've got Abby on record saying this whole mess was her idea." She paused, letting the words settle, feeling the air grow heavier between them. "It seems everything, your marriage falling apart. Sarah's affair, it's all tied to some twisted school project Abby's working on with her classmates. She was ranting, loud and clear, about how you weren't cooperating. She's convinced she'll fail because of you, and she's furious, practically spitting venom about it." Liam's silence stretched on, thick and suffocating, before he finally spoke. "All right. No, Liam. I'd have to find someone in California to dig into it. But it's California, things get messy there fast. Laws are a tangle, and schools have layers of protection. Try anyway." He snapped, his voice rising with a sudden heat that startled her. "This school's got its students ripping their parents' marriages apart for some project. That's sick. Go after them, Lillian. Make them pay." "I'll do my best, Liam," she promised, her mind already racing through contacts and strategies. She softened her tone, sensing the storm brewing in him. "Listen. This is going to be rough, but when Sarah calls, you need to answer. And you need to record it. Do you know how to do that?" No, Lillian, I've got no clue," he admitted, frustration bubbling up. "Why the hell do I have to hear it? Pain and emotional distress? Are you serious?" His voice cracked, turning into a hiss. "I've got to listen to some guy with my wife just to prove I'm falling apart? That's insane. I'll send you a voicemail if she leaves one, that's it. I'm done, Lillian. Just end this for me." Her heart sank. "All right, I'm sorry, Liam. Don't hate me, okay? That'll never happen, Lillian. Never." His words were firm, a lifeline in the chaos, and she clung to them. "I've got to go. I need to do something." "What?" "Bye." The line went dead. Leaving her staring at the phone, the echo of his pain lingering like smoke in the air. Liam hung up, his face flushed a deep crimson, his breath uneven as he shoved the phone into his pocket. He stood in the middle of a sparsely furnished room, the walls bare except for a flickering fluorescent light overhead that buzzed faintly, grating on his already frayed nerves. He ran a hand through his dark hair, tugging at the roots as if he could pull the anger out of himself. "I'm sorry about that, Captain," he muttered, glancing at the woman standing nearby. Captain Maggie Dumbarton was a sturdy figure, her uniform crisp despite the late hour, her sharp green eyes watching him with a mix of curiosity and concern. She leaned against the edge of a metal desk, arms crossed, her short auburn hair catching the light. "No need to apologize, Mr. Robertson," she said, her voice steady but warm. Like she'd seen worse and wasn't fazed. "Things happen to all of us. We just didn't know you were wrestling with this kind of emotional baggage." "That's because I didn't tell anyone," he said. forcing a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. I don't mind you knowing, though, Captain. If you need to. I think I do, Mr. Robertson. She straightened, her posture shifting to something more official. I'm in charge of your security for the next 10 to 14 months. It's my job to understand what's going on with you. You get that, right? Yeah. I do. He nodded, exhaustion creeping into his bones. Really? You're following me around for a whole year? Me and the team you'll meet later, she confirmed, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. Liam handed her his phone, the screen still glowing with the call log. Sarah's my wife. Abby's my daughter. Read the texts, catch up. Maggie took the phone, her fingers brushing his as she scrolled through the messages. Her brows furrowed, and she let out a soft whistle. Well, damn. This is, wow. It's all a school project? Your daughter's behind this? Seems that way, he said, his voice hollow as he stared at the floor, scuffing his boot against a worn tile. This is going to eat up a lot of your time, she observed, handing the phone back. No, it won't. That caller, Lillian, she's my attorney. Been my best friend since college. She's got my power of attorney and will handle everything. My focus is this project, getting it done on time. That's it. I just need to send an email to Abby tonight, another to Sarah on Tuesday, then I'm out. Maggie tilted her head, studying him. What's your plan with your daughter? I've disowned her. Legally cut her off, financially, everything. She's Sarah's problem now. She blinked, clearly taken aback. Well, Mr. Robertson, I misjudged you. You're tougher than I thought. I'm impressed. He shrugged, his jaw tight. I don't see what else I could have done. Like you said, I don't have time for their mess. They made their choices, they can live with them. Are we ready to go shoot something? I need it. Maggie laughed, a sharp, bright sound that cut through the tension. I bet you do, Mr. Robertson. And enough with that, call me Liam unless we're in some stiff formal setting. Anything else, and I'll ignore you. Fair enough, she said, grinning. I'm feeling cranky too, so I get it. In private. I'm Maggie. Any other time, I'll ignore you too. Deal? Deal. He managed a Real laugh this time, faint but genuine. Fair's fair. Let's go shoot. The firing range was nothing to write home about, just a wide, dusty patch of earth with paper targets pinned to wooden stands, flapping faintly in the breeze. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the ground as Sergeant Elliot, a wiry man with a perpetual scowl, walked Liam through the safety rules. His voice was gruff, clipped, like he'd rather be anywhere else. Liam nodded along, slipping on the ear protection and hefting the box of 300 rounds Maggie had handed him. You'll shoot your pistol so we can see what you've got, Maggie explained. Standing a few feet away, hands on her hips. We'll stop you if we spot any bad habits, then let you keep going. Your target's at 7 yards. You practice with this thing much? Yeah, Liam said, checking his 1911.45 ACP with practiced ease. Shooting's relaxing. I hit my local range twice a month, at least. Put about 1,000 rounds through this one since I got it. The instructors there are solid, hope I don't embarrass myself. Load your mags, but keep the pistol safe and unloaded till I say go, she instructed. Start now. Liam moved quickly. His fingers deft as he filled the 4 magazines, the metallic clinks blending with the distant hum of cicadas. When Maggie gave the signal, he fell into his rhythm. The recoil a familiar jolt up his arm, the shots ringing out in steady succession. He emptied the first magazine into the target center, right where the heart would be, then shifted his aim. splitting the rest between the head, throat, and lower torso. Maggie stepped closer as he lowered the gun, her eyes on the shredded target. Very good. You're well trained, shots are tight. Exactly where you wanted them. But I noticed you only hit the center with one mag. The rest are all over. Why? He shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow. I was taught to aim for spots that stop a fight fast. Habit, I guess. Did you use the sights? She asked, squinting at him. Nah. I point aim. Feels natural, like the barrel's an extension of my hand. Interesting. Practical too. You'll need sights for the M4 later, but that works for handguns. Let's move to 15 yards. At 15. His shots spread a little wider, but every round still found the paper. By 25 yards, though, the distance showed, his accuracy faltered. The hole scattering across the target like a sloppy constellation. Maggie nodded as he fired the last of his ammo. That's expected. A 1911 isn't built for long range, and you haven't practiced it. We'll work on that. For now, clean your pistol, quick and thorough. Liam set to work, dismantling the gun with the same calm focus he'd used to shoot it. He didn't notice Sergeant Elliot creeping up until a fistful of sand hit him square in the face, grit lodging in the pistol's crevices. What the hell? He sputtered, glaring at the sergeant. Why'd you do that? Now I've got to start over. Exactly, Elliot said, smirking. Dust and sand'll be your enemy where you're headed. Get used to it. Liam muttered a string of curses under his breath, something about Elliot sounding like the women in his life, and Maggie's laugh rang out again. I am one of the women in your life now, Liam. Clean it quick, you can go fast, right? Elliot hit him with sand twice more before Liam learned to shield the gun with his hand. The M4 was a different beast, fun to shoot. A pain to clean, and Sergeant Peters, a lanky soldier with a knack for hovering, kept pestering him until Liam was ready to snap. By the time they headed to the mess hall, his mood was as sour as the food on his plate. I don't usually eat here, I'm an officer, Maggie said as they sat at a long table surrounded by the platoon's 44 soldiers. This unit's special. Though. We exist just for you. 5 squads, normally led by a lieutenant, but I'm running this show. She introduced him to the team, names blurring together, Rodriguez, Chen, O'Malley. Too many to track. The food was a grayish slop that smelled faintly of regret, but Liam forced it down with a plastered smile, wondering if this was his life for the next year. Back in his quarters. He sat on the edge of a narrow cot, the dim bulb overhead casting harsh shadows across his face. He opened his laptop, fingers hovering over the keys before he started typing an email to Abby. He didn't care if she read it, didn't care about much anymore. The words came slow, deliberate, each one a brick in the wall he was building between them. This is the last you'll hear from me. I don't need to explain what I've done, you wouldn't get it anyway. I'm not like you or your cheating mother. I've legally disowned you, cut you off completely. It's done. You're not my daughter. Not my child, not my heir, you killed that. This week's the last money you'll see from me. You and Sarah are off my company insurance by month's end, no health, no life, nothing. That's on you now. Get a job, figure out what real life's like. I don't know why you did this, tore us apart, stabbed me in the back. Hope you're proud. If this was your goal, congrats. If not, it's all been for nothing. I'm sickened I had a hand in raising you. Oh, and I'm divorcing your mom, obviously. Don't call, don't text, don't email, don't come looking. You won't find me. You made your bed, lie in it. He stared at the screen, jaw clenched, unsatisfied but too drained to care. It'd do. He hit send, CC'd Lillian, and shut the laptop. Abby didn't reply, not that he expected her to. Sarah, though, was another story. Her first text came late Sunday, sharp and demanding, "Where are you? I told you to come home today. Robert's waiting to meet you. Get back here now, or I'll call a lawyer. Don't test me, Liam. Come home." He ignored it, letting the words fester in his mind like an open wound. Then Monday afternoon brought more, "Are you insane? Divorcing me for cheating? Is this a joke? Why'd you humiliate me at work? Why didn't you call or come home? There's no need for this, Liam, you don't get to judge me. I do what I want. Drop these stupid lawsuits against Robert and **. The message cut off, unfinished, but the venom was clear. He stared at it, the phone trembling slightly in his hand. Then forwarded it to Lillian without a word. Let her deal with it. He was done. Liam's fingers hovered over his phone. The weight of his decision pressing down on him like a storm cloud ready to burst. The chaos at home had spiraled beyond repair, and his patience had frayed to a single, brittle thread. He typed out a message with a trembling hand, each word dripping with exasperation and a flicker of wounded hope. "My company's done with this madness. Stop it now, Sarah. And come home today, right this second." He hit send and slumped back, staring at the ceiling of his temporary quarters, wondering if she'd even care. An hour crawled by, each minute gnawing at him. Until his phone buzzed with her reply, a venomous torrent that hit him like a slap across the face. "Sarah, have you lost your damn mind? You disowned our daughter, what the hell is wrong with you? Is this some pathetic ploy to drag me back? It's not working. Liam, stop whatever you're doing, this isn't you." Her words seethed with accusation, but beneath them, he sensed her desperation. A jagged edge of panic she couldn't hide. He clenched his jaw, torn between fury and a pang of pity he didn't want to feel. Late Monday afternoon draped the world in a gray haze as Liam trudged through the day, his mind a battlefield of resentment and exhaustion. Another message from Sarah lit up his screen. This one sharper, more unhinged. "I hope you're happy, you jerk. I got fired today, and so did Robert. Why did you go after him? He didn't do a damn thing wrong. I'll make you pay for this. You bastard, I hate you." The venom in her words stung, but it was the mention of Robert that twisted the knife deeper. Robert, her loyal shadow, caught in the crossfire of her reckless choices. Liam pictured him, a quiet, unassuming guy with tired eyes and a slouch, probably baffled at being dragged into this mess. He didn't deserve it, not really. But Sarah's orbit had a way of scorching everyone around her. Hours later, as dusk settled over the city like a heavy blanket, his phone buzzed again. This time, her tone had shifted. Soft and pleading, a stark contrast to the fire she'd spat before. "Sarah, come home, Liam, please. We can fix this. Let me explain, I don't want to lose you. Come back to me, please. You know I love you. This is all a huge misunderstanding, just come home." The words tugged at him, stirring a flicker of the old warmth they'd once shared. But it drowned quickly under the tide of betrayal he couldn't unsee. Liam sat in the dim light of his temporary office, scrolling through the messages, each one a fresh wound. He forwarded them to Captain Dumbarton, a no-nonsense woman with a sharp gaze and a knack for seeing through bullshit. She'd been his rock through this storm. And he needed her to know every ugly detail. Then he sent them to Lillian, his lawyer and confidant, a woman whose dry wit and fierce loyalty had kept him sane. He didn't call her until that evening, when the weight of the day had settled into his bones. "Hey, Lillian, busy day, huh?" he said, forcing a lightness he didn't feel. Her laugh crackled through the line, warm and knowing. You have no idea, Liam. We've still got the cameras at your old place, it's been a damn circus. Sarah's bouncing between screaming fits and sobbing her eyes out. Like she can't decide which one's gonna fix her. That boyfriend of hers is glued to her side, doesn't give a damn about anything but being her lapdog. What a creep. Liam smirked despite himself. Picturing the guy, some slick-haired nobody with a vacant stare, hovering around Sarah like a moth to a flame. What about Abby? He asked, his voice tightening. Did she see my email? What's going on with her? Lillian's tone sharpened. Yeah, I filed the lawsuit against her. One of my guys is already there, she'll get served by morning, probably right in the middle of class. The school's getting hit first, they know it's coming. Your case against them won't stick long term, but the bad press. That'll sting. Abby and her little crew are losing their scholarships, it's already locked in. She's on a full ride, so she's out unless she can cough up the cash. She can't. No grants. No loans, not with your lawsuit hanging over her. That's what you wanted, right? Liam exhaled, a mix of relief and guilt churning in his gut. Yeah, that works. You okay, Liam? She asked, softer now. Yeah, I guess. They're keeping me swamped here, keeps my mind off it. Tomorrow'll be different, though. I'll feel it all then. Lillian's voice turned firm. I'll tell Sarah tomorrow she's gotta go through you for everything. You ready for that? She laughed again, a sound that steadied him. Hell yes, send her my way, tell her to bring her lawyer. We'll handle it. Thanks for everything, Lillian, I'd be lost without you. Her tone softened, rare and genuine. Hey, Liam, you know I care about you, right? Not the marrying kind of care, but deep. Maybe when you're back, you can make a pitch for that marrying kind. Either way, I'm here, always. Never doubt it. He smiled faintly. I won't. Hey, maybe take a vacation, join me for a couple weeks? She chuckled. No way, cowboy, my vacation's a beach, not a war zone. Set that up, and you've got a deal. Tuesday morning dawned crisp and chaotic. The air buzzing with purpose as Liam packed his gear. He and his platoon were set to board a military flight out of Georgia, leaving the wreckage of his old life behind. Before he left, he fired off one last text to Sarah and Lillian, his fingers steady now, resolute. Sarah, get a lawyer, make an appointment with Lillian and bring them. Bring Abby too, she should be with you by then. Lillian's got my full authority on all personal matters, ignore her at your own risk. I'm leaving the country today, and I won't be back for a long time. Anything Lillian says or does is with my full approval. We're separated now, officially, and the divorce is coming. I'm not covering your bills or your mess, losing your jobs on you. You're on your own. I thought about saying I wish things were different, but you and Abby made that impossible. You reap what you sow. He hit send. A final severing of the thread that had tethered him to them, and boarded the plane with a hollow ache in his chest. Across town, Abby Robertson slouched in her lecture hall seat, surrounded by the hum of her classmates. She yawned, exhaustion pulling at her like a tide. She hadn't slept since her father's email landed in her inbox, a cold, curt goodbye that had left her reeling. Her mother had been useless, spiraling in her own drama, offering no comfort, no answers. Anger simmered in Abby's chest, hot and reckless. What right did he have to cut her off like this? To erase her from his life like she was nothing? Was it even legal? She didn't know, didn't care, she'd fight it, claw her way back just to spite him. The professor's voice droned on, but the room shifted when two figures stepped in, the dean, stern and graying, and a young woman in casual clothes, her posture all business. They murmured to the professor, who paused, then cleared his throat. Class is cancelled today. The following students, come forward. He rattled off names, Abby's among them. Alongside her project group. The room emptied fast, but a few lingered, phones out, recording the scene like vultures circling a kill. Abby stood with her friends, legs shaky. As the dean and the woman approached. "Abby Robertson, step forward and face me," the woman said, voice flat but commanding. Abby frowned, rooted in place, defiance flickering in her eyes. "Abby Robertson, step forward," the woman repeated, sharper now. The dean scowled, his patience thinning. "Do it, Miss Robertson, now." She shuffled forward, knees wobbling. And the woman handed her an envelope. "Abby Robertson, you've been served. This is a court order stating you've been disowned and disinherited by Liam Carl Robertson, your former father. You're no longer his child or heir. Do you understand what's in your hand?" Abby's throat tightened, words tangling. I don't, what's happening?" "Yes or no, Miss Robertson, do you understand?" The woman pressed. "Yes, I understand, but..." "Good," the woman cut in, producing a second envelope. Abby recoiled, dread pooling in her stomach. But the dean's glare forced her trembling hand to take it. "You've been served. This is a notice, you're being sued for alienation of affection. Blamed for destroying the marriage of Liam Carl Robertson and Sarah Ann Robertson. Do you understand?" Tears spilled down Abby's cheeks, her body quaking as nausea rose. I do," she choked out. Barely audible over the dean's growl of impatience. One by one, her friends were served too, their summons piling up like debris after a storm. One girl retched. The sound echoing in the stunned silence, all of it caught on camera by the stragglers. The dean barked that their scholarships were gone, they were no longer students here. "Get legal help, fast." He snapped, storming out with the professor in tow. The young woman lingered, her gaze icy as she addressed them. "Liam Carl Robertson wanted you to know actions have consequences. You'll all face what you did to his marriage, to him. Your pitiful excuses for people." She turned and left, her associate trailing with a phone still recording. Later. Liam watched the footage with Captain Dumbarton, tears pricking his eyes as the weight of it crashed over him. He hated this, hated them, but the captain's quiet nod of respect told him he'd done what he had to. 3 weeks later, Lillian sat in her office meeting room, poised and predatory. Waiting for Sarah to arrive with her lawyer, Charles Baker. Charlie was a pompous ass she'd crushed a dozen times before, and she relished the chance to do it again. Sarah and Abby shuffled in behind him, their faces pinched with worry, maybe fear. Good. Charlie strutted like he owned the place, oblivious to the trap he'd walked into. "Coffee or water, anyone?" Lillian asked, voice smooth as silk. Charlie, predictable as ever, demanded coffee. Abby murmured for water. Sarah stayed silent, her eyes darting nervously. Lillian slid a single sheet across the table to each of them. "This meeting's recorded. Here's Liam Robertson's power of attorney. I'm his sole representative while he's gone. Review it." Charlie skimmed it with a smirk, while Sarah and Abby pored over every word, tension radiating off them. Lillian handed Charlie a thick folder next. "Review this with your client. It's got video, audio, texts, sworn statements, proof Sarah cheated and torched her marriage in the ugliest way possible." Sarah opened her mouth, but Lillian cut her off. "Call me Miss Prescott, Mrs. Robertson, speak through your lawyer." She slid another folder to Charlie, this one heavier. "Here's more, sworn statements, video, texts from Abby's little school project crew. She and her mom teamed up to ruin Liam's life. All 4 kids confessed, they'll testify for him. You representing Abby too, Charlie?" He stammered, yes, I am." Lillian's sneer was a blade. Good luck. Drop it after you see this, it'll save you the embarrassment. She leaned forward, eyes glinting. Now, let's talk about your client supporting Sarah until the trial. She's jobless. Desperate, tough spot, huh? A phone rang, and Lillian tapped her laptop. Liam's face flickered onto the TV behind her, grainy but unmistakable, watching from a world away as the room held its breath. The room buzzed with tension, a palpable electricity crackling beneath the hum of fluorescent lights. Armed soldiers stood like statues around the perimeter, their faces carved from stone. Rifles glinting faintly in the dim glow. Liam sat at the center of it all, his posture rigid yet oddly relaxed, as if he'd long since surrendered to the chaos swirling around him. A woman, clad in tactical gear with a commander's insignia stitched into her sleeve, rested a steady hand on his shoulder. Her presence was a quiet anchor. Her sharp eyes scanning the room with the vigilance of someone who'd seen too much to ever fully let her guard down. "Liam," she said, her voice cutting through the haze of his exhaustion, "welcome. I'm sorry we had to drag you out of bed for this. Thank you for agreeing to join us." Her tone carried a warmth that felt genuine, though it was laced with the weight of necessity. Liam rubbed a hand over his stubbled jaw, his eyes heavy with sleep and something deeper, something that gnawed at him from the inside. "That's fine, Lillian," he replied, his voice rough but steady. "Just tell me why I'm here. What do you need me to confirm?" Lillian paused, her fingers tightening briefly on his shoulder before she stepped closer, her shadow falling across the table. "First things first," she began, her words deliberate, each one chosen with care. "Do you still intend to push forward with the divorce, exactly as you planned?" Liam's gaze hardened. A spark of resolve igniting behind the weariness. "Yes," he said, the word a quiet thunderclap. "As planned. She gets nothing from me, nothing. She can claw through garbage cans if she wants to survive, for all I care. I just want this over. Get her out of my life, Lillian. For good." His voice trembled with a fury he didn't bother to hide. A raw, jagged edge that sliced through the air. Lillian nodded, her expression unreadable, though her eyes flickered with a mix of understanding and grim determination. "Next question." She continued, her tone shifting slightly, growing colder. "Are you still moving ahead with the lawsuits for alienation of affection?" "Yes," Liam snapped, his hands curling into fists on the table. "All of them. Every last one. No mercy, Lillian. Make them pay, every single person who tore my life apart." His eyes darted across the room, landing on Abby, his daughter, who sat pale and trembling under his icy stare. She flinched, her chair scraping faintly against the floor as she nearly bolted upright. But her mother, Sarah, gripped her arm, anchoring her in place with a desperation that bordered on panic. Lillian's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't falter. "And finally," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, "have you reconsidered the dissolution of issue against Abby Robertson?" Liam's face twisted, a storm of pain and betrayal flashing across his features. "No," he said, his voice flat, hollow. "That person, she doesn't exist to me anymore. Are we done here, Lillian? I've got a packed day ahead, and I need you to handle what we talked about. You've got my full support. Just do it." "Thank you, Liam," Lillian replied, her tone softening for a moment. "Stay safe out there." A faint, crooked grin tugged at Liam's lips as he leaned back in his chair, the movement revealing the sleek outline of a pistol nestled in a shoulder holster beneath his jacket. "Yeah," he said, nodding toward the armed captain standing vigilant at his side. "Not much choice with her shadowing me everywhere. Gotta love her, though, she's keeping me in one piece." His words carried a dry humor, but there was an undercurrent of gratitude. A lifeline he clung to in the wreckage of his world. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as the screen flickered with the image of her husband, armed, distant, and unrecognizable from the man she'd once known. "Liam, where are you? What are you doing?" Her voice cracked, panic bleeding through every syllable. Liam's frown deepened, his patience fraying. Without another word, he ended the call, the screen going dark. Sarah whirled on Lillian, her eyes wild with fear and desperation. "Where is he, Lillian? Where's my husband? Tell me, I have a right to know." Lillian's composure didn't waver, though her eyes blazed with a fury she barely contained. "No, you don't, Mrs. Robertson," she said, her voice a blade dipped in ice. "By Liam Robertson's explicit orders, you'll address me as Miss Prescott. You're legally separated. You're not in his will. You have no rights where my client is concerned. I might choose to share some details if I feel like it, but don't you dare lecture me about rights after what you did to that man." Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks, hot and unrelenting, as she crumpled under the weight of Lillian's words. Beside her, Abby sobbed quietly, her shoulders shaking as the reality of her father's contempt crashed over her like a tidal wave. "Lillian. Please," Sarah begged, her voice breaking. "He's in danger, isn't he? What's he doing? Where is he? Bring him back, I love him, please." Lillian's fury erupted. A volcano of emotion she could no longer suppress. She wanted to grab Sarah by the shoulders and shake her until the lies fell away, but she forced herself to stay rooted, her hands trembling at her sides. "You love him," she spat, her voice dripping with scorn. "That's a lie, and you know it." Charlie, Sarah's lawyer, cleared his throat, cutting through the escalating storm. "Lillian, this is messy enough already, don't you think? What harm is there in letting my client know where her husband is? Does it really matter that much to the court proceedings? You've got full authority to act on his behalf, so why keep it a secret?" Lillian's glare shifted to Charlie, then back to Sarah and Abby, her eyes narrowing as she weighed her next move. Finally, she exhaled sharply and nodded. "Fine. You're right, Charlie, for once." She sank into a chair, her movements deliberate, and began to speak. Her voice low and deliberate, each word a brick in the wall she built between them. "Liam was offered a chance to lead a project overseas," she said, her tone heavy with the weight of what came next. "It wasn't really an offer, though, more like an ultimatum. Take the job or find something else." He wanted to talk it over with his devoted wife before deciding. He kept it quiet, mulling it over. "Until the day he came home to lay it all out for you, Sarah. That's when you dropped your bomb. You were going on a date with Robert Lindstrom. Liam couldn't even get a word in about his future. All he could process was you abandoning him for your lover. You turned your back on him that night, on your marriage, on everything you'd built together. I don't care what excuses you've cooked up, you threw him away like he was nothing." She paused, letting the silence settle like dust over a battlefield. After that, he saw no reason to turn down the job. He accepted it that very evening. Before he left, he tried to reach out to Abby, to explain where he was going, what he was stepping into. But she was too busy shoving him out of her life, didn't even spare him a second thought, didn't care how much he was hurting. She just slammed the door shut without a shred of remorse. Abby shrank further into her seat, her sobs growing louder, her hands twisting in her lap as guilt clawed at her insides. Lillian pressed on, relentless. He was scheduled to leave that Saturday. He had just enough time to tie up loose ends. "You, Mrs. Robertson, didn't bother coming back to the house. You told him not to disturb you while you were off with your lover for the rest of the week. So he didn't. He mourned the family he'd lost, handled what he needed to, and left early Saturday morning. He spent 3 days at Fort Benning in Georgia, training with weapons. Learning how to survive what was coming. Then he boarded a military plane to Iraq. Now he's bouncing between Iraq and Afghanistan, committed to at least a year out there. That woman you saw beside him? She's the commander of his personal security team. Her whole job is keeping him alive. Lillian leaned forward, her voice dropping to a searing whisper. He's where he is because you gave him nothing to stay for. No wife. No daughter. No family. You two ripped it all away from him. So don't you dare talk to me about rights. You both make me sick. The room fell into a suffocating silence, broken only by the ragged sound of Sarah's and Abby's weeping. Charlie shifted uncomfortably, his bored expression faltering as he sipped his coffee. Clearly wishing he were anywhere else. All right, then, he said, forcing a casual tone. As for the divorce, my client wants, no, she gets nothing. No alimony, no support. She can either buy out Liam's share of the house or sell it. We know she's got the money to cover it. Sarah's head snapped up, confusion cutting through her tears. What? How did? Please. Charlie, Lillian interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. Liam handled all the finances. He had access to her accounts, with her permission, mind you, and she never revoked it. It's irrelevant anyway. She's unemployed? Not my client's fault. Her own reckless choices and behavior got her fired, not Liam's. He's not going to suffer because your client couldn't keep her life together. Charlie opened his mouth to argue, but Lillian barreled on. Spare me the sob story, Charlie. She is what she is. Liam still has access to the house, which means I do too. I had it appraised while we were removing the security cameras he'd installed. She slid a stack of papers across the table, her movements sharp and precise. You know he'll get at least 65% in an adultery case, maybe more, since his money paid the mortgage. I've got the payment history right here, all from his account. Your client? She never chipped in a dime, even when she was working. Charlie skimmed the appraisal, shaking his head with a faint grimace. Fine, Lillian, but there's also a countersuit. Abby wants Liam to cover the rest of her education, tuition, room, board, even an allowance. Lillian's laugh was sharp, biting. No. Absolutely not. Abby Robertson is no longer his responsibility. She won't survive his lawsuit against her, she gets nothing but our contempt, and she should thank her lucky stars for that. Forget it, Charlie. Her 4 friends? They've spilled everything. Gave us recordings, notes, the whole ugly story. Handed it over without any promises of leniency in the suits. They're ready to testify against your soon-to-be ex-wife and Abby. There's no question, Abby kicked this off, and Sarah helped orchestrate it. You're wasting your client's time and money. They get nothing. Charlie leaned back, exasperation creeping into his posture. Then why are we even here? What's the point if you're going to stonewall us like this? 2 reasons, Lillian said, her voice steady and cold. First, to hand over our evidence. Second, to make sure your clients see Liam's resolve with their own eyes. They watched him. They heard him. There's no room for doubt now, is there? She ignored Sarah and Abby entirely. Her focus locked on Charlie. He glanced at his clients, who sat frozen in their misery, until Sarah's voice broke through, shaky but defiant. I'll fight the divorce. I don't care what evidence you have. I'll demand counseling, I can do that. Lillian's laugh was harsh, a jagged sound that echoed off the walls. Go ahead. Get your counseling order. You'll sit through 1 session, with me. Explain it, Charlie. She's right, Charlie muttered, rubbing his temples. Lillian can represent him in every way, including court-ordered counseling. She speaks for him. That's not fair. Sarah cried, her voice rising. I want to talk to my husband, explain myself. You had your chance, Mrs. Robertson, Lillian shot back, her words unyielding. You ignored it. So did your daughter. Face what you've done, take what Liam's offering, and move on. Maybe he'll soften down the line, doubtful, but possible. Charlie bristled. These are my clients, Lillian. You shouldn't. Then you tell them, she cut in, her tone daring him to push her further. I'm being generous here, Charlie. Because I used to call your client a friend. But push me, and I'll turn ruthless. I despise them for what they did to Liam. Go on, test me. I'll ruin them for good. Charlie faltered. Sweat beading on his brow. I see. Let me take some time to review what you've given me and talk to my clients. You've got until Friday, 5 p.m., Lillian said, her voice a steel trap. Not a second later. That's insane, Charlie protested, but Lillian wasn't done. I'll make it easy for you, she said, leaning forward. Watch the videos of Sarah with her lover, 10 minutes. And you'll see she's got no shot in the divorce. Spend a couple hours on the evidence from Abby's friends, you'll know they're both guilty beyond doubt. Take an hour to listen to your clients plotting against Liam. Then spend 20 minutes on Sarah's financials. By this afternoon, you'll see exactly where they stand. You've got my clients' demands. They're non-negotiable. By Friday, you either cave, or I take everything they've got. They deliberately destroyed Liam's life. I'll destroy theirs. Charlie stared at her, stunned. I've never seen you like this, Lillian. I'd advise some professional restraint. She smirked, cutting him off. Laugh it off, Charlie. You know I filed in Judge Merkel's court. I used to work for her. She's already seen all of this, talked to Liam twice, interviewed Abby's friends, read their statements. You'll get your turn, sure. I give you 7 minutes to present your case before you're done. I'll even bet you, Sarah won't keep Liam's name after the divorce. She'll need her birth certificate in court. Because she's leaving with her maiden name. That's ridiculous, Charlie sputtered. The court can't. Bet me, Lillian challenged, her eyes glinting. Coffee for a week. Loser pays. No. Of course not, he stammered, flustered. You're being absurd. Sure I am, she said, her confidence unshaken. You've never beaten me in court, Charlie. Not even close. This time. I'll crush you so hard you'll never step foot in a courtroom again. Might as well start a dry-cleaning business. Sarah and Abby watched the exchange, their faces pale with dread. Lillian's fury was a living thing, a storm they couldn't escape, and even Charlie, their last line of defense, was crumbling, fidgeting in his seat, sweat staining his collar. They felt the ground slipping beneath them, a sinking realization that they were outmatched, outmaneuvered. Sarah's voice broke the tension, small and trembling. Enough, Lillian. Please, enough. Mr. Baker, thank you for your time. I no longer need your services. Leave the documents with me and send your final bill to my address. Charlie blinked, caught off guard. This is crazy, Mrs. Robertson. But she was already turning away, her world unraveling thread by thread, as Lillian's unrelenting gaze burned into her back. The air in the conference room hung heavy. Thick with tension that seemed to cling to every surface like damp fog on a dreary morning. Sarah's eyes flicked to her watch. The sleek silver band glinting faintly under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her voice cut through the silence, sharp and unwavering. Though beneath it trembled a current of exhaustion she couldn't fully mask. I'm not paying you a dime past 11 a.m. today, Charlie. You should pack up and go. And don't expect me to foot the bill for representing Abby, either. She's on her own if she wants to keep fighting her case. Her words landed like stones, each one sinking deeper into the strained atmosphere. Beside her, Abby flinched, her wide eyes darting nervously between her mother and the man across the table. "Mom, please, just stop," she whispered, her voice fragile, teetering on the edge of breaking. "Be quiet, Abby," Sarah snapped, her tone brittle, a hair's breadth from shattering under the weight of her own resolve. Charlie Baker, the attorney, let out a huff, a short, exasperated burst of air that carried his frustration and disbelief. His chair scraped against the linoleum floor as he shoved it back, the sound grating against the stillness. Without another word, he stormed out, the door slamming shut behind him with a force that reverberated through the room. Sarah sank back into her seat, her shoulders slumping as if the fight had drained the last of her strength. Defeat settled over her like a heavy coat, suffocating and inescapable. Abby, meanwhile, sat frozen, her hands twisting in her lap, her face pale and etched with fear. She looked small, diminished, as though the world she'd known was crumbling beneath her feet and she had no idea how to stop it. From the far end of the table, Lillian's voice sliced through the haze, flat and devoid of warmth. "You two need to get out of here. Find another lawyer if you want. But don't dawdle, the judge isn't going to wait around for you to get your act together." Sarah shook her head slowly, almost mechanically, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond the room's beige walls. "No," she murmured, her voice hollow. "No more lawyers. I'm done fighting the divorce. Tell me what Liam wants. Do you have his demands written down somewhere?" Lillian's lips twitched, a flicker of something, disdain, perhaps, crossing her stern features. "Sarah, you shouldn't even be speaking to me like this. I'm Liam's lawyer, not yours, and this meeting's still being recorded. You know that, right?" Sarah nodded faintly, unperturbed. "I know. I don't care. Just tell me what he's asking for." Lillian snorted, a harsh, derisive sound that made Sarah's body jerk involuntarily. "He told me to burn you both to the ground," she said, her words cold and deliberate, each syllable a dagger aimed straight at Sarah's chest. Sarah recoiled, her breath catching as the brutality of it hit her. For a moment, she seemed to shrink, her composure fraying at the edges. Then, with a shaky exhale, she straightened, forcing herself to meet Lillian's gaze. "Fine. How do you plan to do that? Are you seriously asking me to keep going with you as his lawyer?" Lillian's eyes narrowed, but Sarah pressed on, her voice gaining a strange, resigned strength. "I'm serious. I accept it, I'm the one who broke this marriage. It's all on me. Liam didn't deserve any of it, the way I treated him. The shame I brought him. So tell me, what's my punishment?" Lillian tilted her head, studying Sarah with a mix of curiosity and contempt. "Have you even read the divorce papers?" Sarah's fingers tightened around the edge of the table, her knuckles whitening. "I did, yes, but it's a blur. I was in shock when they came. I never thought he'd actually go through with it. I don't know why I convinced myself he'd stay, that he'd agree to the changes I wanted. It's stupid, looking back, I knew how much he loved me. God, he loved me so deeply. And I thought that meant he'd bend, that he'd have to accept it. I should have seen it. I should have known better." Her voice cracked, and she pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob that threatened to spill out. Across from her, Abby's eyes welled up, but she stayed silent, her fear morphing into something quieter, more resigned. Lillian leaned forward, her tone cutting. "Yes, you should have known better. And now he's in danger, constant danger, because of what you did. The people protecting him are top-notch, though. He's got a fighting chance to make it through this mess. But you, Sarah, he was ready to walk away from it all. He told me he was quitting his job, that he had a plan. Until he came home and you dropped your idiotic bombshell on him. Sarah's body shook as the sobs broke free, raw, and unrestrained. He was going to quit, she choked out. Tears streaming down her face. That's what he said, and then I ruined it. And Abby, God, Abby was the final blow. She could have changed things, but she didn't care about him either. Lillian's expression remained stony, unmoved by the display of emotion. You'll pay off the house and hand it over to him, she said, her voice flat. Sarah shook her head vehemently, wiping at her wet cheeks. He doesn't want it. He told me he'd never step foot in that place again, not after what I did, with that man, in his bed. Her voice faltered, shame dripping from every word. I'll sell it, then. He can have every cent from the sale. Lillian nodded curtly. That's a start. But there's more, no alimony for you, no maintenance for you or Abby. Nothing. He's cutting you both off completely, no insurance, no support, zero. Especially not for her. She jerked her head toward Abby, who shrank further into her chair, her hands trembling. I'll take it. Sarah said quietly, her resolve hardening even as her tears lingered. What about you, Lillian? Your fees? Lillian smirked, a bitter edge to it. Liam's already covered what needed paying. I'm doing this for free, representing my friend, not taking a single penny. That's not your concern. You can keep your car, he doesn't need one where he is. And the house? He doesn't want a damn thing from it anymore. Sarah frowned, her mind racing. The bank accounts, what about those? Lillian shrugged. He took half of the joint checking and savings before he left. Plus half the CDs you shared. The rest are in the office safe, like he said. You haven't even checked, have you? Sarah shook her head, dazed. No, I haven't. I should've. There's more. Lillian continued, her voice taking on a darker edge. I could strip you bare, Sarah, take everything you've got left. But I won't. Liam's in a bad place, hurting, broken by what you and Abby did. He just wants you gone, out of his life, and I'm with him on that. The sooner you're out, the better for him. Come back tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll have the papers ready for you to sign. Sell the house quick, the divorce won't finalize until it's done. Oh, and spell your maiden name for me. Liam insists you drop his, he says you don't deserve it, and he's right. Sarah swallowed hard. Nodding. Haskell. Sarah and Haskell. That's who I was born as, and I'll go back to it. Lillian gave a curt nod. Good. That's it for me. The lawsuit against Abby? That's not your problem anymore. She's your daughter, sure, but she's an adult who torched her family, your marriage, her father. She answers for herself now. Sarah's mouth opened, then closed, words failing her. Abby's tears spilled over, silent streams carving paths down her cheeks. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Sarah whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Lillian's gaze hardened. But it did, you fool. What did you expect? That Liam would just roll over for your selfish little games? Did you ever respect him at all? Sarah's hands twisted together, her voice barely audible. I read stuff, studies, theories. They said this shouldn't have gone this way. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Abby sobbed harder, her voice breaking through. You idiot, Mom, studies? You did this to Dad because of some stupid studies? Did you even check where they came from? Lillian's patience snapped. Enough. Abby, What about the others in your little group? Did they pull this stunt with their parents too? Abby nodded, her voice small and quivering. Yeah, we tried, but their parents didn't listen. Some laughed at us. Sarah cut in, her tone desperate. It's my fault, Lillian. Abby called me about it, and I was curious. It sounded right, somehow. I didn't want to lose Liam, but I wanted more, something different. I'd never cheated before. Not in all our years together. I convinced myself it wasn't cheating, just reshaping our marriage to fit me. I thought I was free. Lillian's lip curled in disgust. Jesus, Sarah. And you? Abby, did it ever cross your mind to talk to your dad about this when you dragged your mom into it? Abby shook her head, tears dripping onto the table. No. I knew he'd say no. I knew it'd hurt him. But I thought I could help him through it. Help him? Lillian scoffed, pulling out her phone. I've got your texts right here. That's your idea of help, pushing him to accept your mother's betrayal? Abby shrank back, her sobs growing louder. Lillian's glare swept between them, venomous. This is what passes for intelligence these days. You two make me ashamed to share the same gender. Abby. How are you handling Liam's lawsuit? $1 million, he's coming for you. Are you fighting it? Abby's voice was a broken whisper. I don't want it. I just want it to go away. I don't have that kind of money, I can't make it stop. Lillian's eyes flashed. Tough luck. You haven't even said you're sorry for what you did to him. Grow up, this is on you. Sarah interjected. Her voice trembling but firm. She's right, Lillian. We deserve this. Abby's already lost her scholarships, her education's gone, she can't get loans or grants. I've got another job lined up. Not great, but I can work with you. We could pay a settlement if it's not too much. Lillian's expression didn't soften. I don't care about her schooling, Sarah. She threw it away, that's her mess. I won't let you bail her out. She answers for herself. Liam won't budge, and I speak for him. Settle with me, or take it to court, she's got no shot there. Sarah nodded, desperate. Okay, how much? What'll calm your anger, Liam's anger? Lillian leaned back, her jaw tight as she considered. The other parents offered $100,000 each, and I might take it. But not from Abby. For her, it's $250,000. One-time offer, accept it now, or face the full $1 million in court. Abby's eyes widened, her mouth falling open in stunned silence. Then, as the weight of it crashed down, she crumpled. Fainting dead away and hitting the floor with a dull thud. Sarah rushed to her, kneeling beside her daughter's limp form. Her hands shaking as she grabbed a water bottle from the table and splashed some on Abby's face. After a tense few minutes, Abby stirred, blinking groggily as Sarah helped her back into her chair. Lillian didn't move, didn't even glance over, just watched with cold detachment. Done with the theatrics, she asked, and Abby's eyes finally focused. Anything else? More crying? I need an answer, accept or refuse. Sarah opened her mouth, but Lillian cut her off sharply. No. Abby speaks. Abby's voice trembled, barely audible. I accept. Then the tears came again. Harder this time. Lillian snorted, gathering her folders. 3 weeks. Get a full-time job, show me proof, and start payments to the account I give you. Come with your mom tomorrow to sign the settlement. Now get out, you both disgust me. As Lillian stood, Sarah's voice broke through, tentative. Lillian, wait, just one thing. Can I write to Liam? An email, maybe? Lillian froze, turning slowly, incredulity etched across her face. God, Sarah, what do you think you'll get out of that? He's got enough on his plate, he doesn't care about your excuses. It's too late for that. Leave him alone. Give it 6, 7 months, then ask me again. For now, just let him be. With that, she swept her papers into her arms and walked out, leaving Sarah and Abby in the wreckage of their choices, the silence swallowing them whole. In the dim glow of a quiet room, Lillian's voice wavered with a fragile mix of longing and restraint. It's not like that, Sarah. I just need to know he's okay, nothing more than that. Maybe a little message every now and then to ease my mind. Her words hung in the air, heavy with an unspoken ache. She sat at the edge of her worn leather chair, her fingers tracing the armrest as if it could anchor her racing thoughts. Are you still tangled up with that deadbeat? She asked, her tone sharpening for a moment before softening again. Sarah shook her head quickly, her chestnut hair swaying with the motion. No, there's no one. Not since that day, the papers showed up, and it all fell apart. I swear, Lillian, he's gone. There's been no one else. Her voice cracked, a brittle edge betraying the storm brewing inside her. She stood near the window, the late afternoon light casting long shadows across her face, illuminating the faint redness around her eyes. She'd been served the divorce papers like a slap she hadn't seen coming, and now the emptiness gnawed at her. Lillian leaned forward, her gaze piercing yet tinged with something almost maternal. I didn't tell you this lightly, Sarah. You need to hear me. If you double-cross me, you're done. Do you get that? Her words were a hiss, low and deliberate, carrying the weight of a promise she'd keep. Sarah nodded, tears spilling over as she clasped her hands together, her knuckles whitening. I get it, she whispered, her sobs breaking through. He's still got that old email, the personal one. I don't know if he checks it much, but it's there. I won't mess this up, Lillian, I swear. Thank you. Her gratitude was desperate, a lifeline she clung to with trembling fingers. Don't mention it, Lillian snapped, her voice a whip crack before softening again. But one more thing, keep Abby away from him for now. Give it time. She broke his heart worse than you did, turning on him like that. His only kid, she trailed off, her eyes distant, lost in the memory of Liam's quiet devastation. Sarah nodded again, wiping her face with the back of her hand. I know. Thank you. Across an ocean, in a room shrouded in shadows, Liam stirred awake. The faint glow of a nightlight flickered against the walls, doing little to chase away the oppressive darkness that pressed in around him. He shifted under the thin blanket, his breath shallow as he glanced over at Maggie beside him. She was awake too, her presence steady and unyielding, like a sentinel in the night. Her dark hair spilled across the pillow. And though she didn't move or speak, he could feel her eyes on him, those deep, unreadable eyes framed by what she called her resting face. It was a mask of calm, devoid of any hint of emotion. And it had taken him months to stop searching it for clues. Now, though, he found solace in its stillness, a quiet harbor amid the chaos of his life. What woke you? Maggie's whisper cut through the silence, soft but alert, her voice carrying the faintest trace of concern. Liam rubbed a hand over his face, feeling the stubble along his jaw. I don't know, he murmured, his tone hushed as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace. Maybe a bad dream. Or gas. A faint smile tugged at her lips, and he caught it, a quick glimmer of teeth in the dark. Gone as fast as it came. It was enough to warm him, a small spark in the endless night. Maggie's vision was sharper than his in this gloom, she could trace the lines of his body with ease, noting how the months of hard work had carved away the softness he'd once carried. At nearly 42, he moved with the vigor of a man a decade younger. His frame lean and taut from the drills she'd put him through. She'd been his guide, his teacher, and now she didn't need to hover over him anymore, he could hold his own. Still, she stayed close. Drawn to his quiet strength in a way she hadn't expected. Maggie didn't let people in easily. Men had drifted through her life like shadows, never lingering long enough to leave a mark. That impassive face of hers, those who didn't know her called it cold, even eerie, kept them at bay. But Liam wasn't like them. He'd told her once that her stillness grounded him. And she'd tucked that confession away, letting it bloom into something she hadn't dared name. He was sharp, honest, patient, with a dry humor that coaxed rare laughter from her chest. And brave, God! Was he brave? She admired that most of all. They'd been side by side for a month now, thrown together by circumstance rather than choice, and yet here they were. A pair of misfits carving out something real amid the dust and danger. It had been a routine patrol, the Humvee rattling along a desolate stretch of road. When the tire blew out with a deafening bang. Instinct kicked in, they'd scrambled for cover, weapons drawn, hearts pounding as they scanned the horizon for an ambush. But there was no enemy. Just a shredded tire and a cloud of sand settling around them. Maggie cursed under her breath, kicking the busted rubber as Liam checked the vehicle. No spare. She radioed for a tow. Spitting their coordinates into the crackling line, and the voice on the other end told them to sit tight for 2 hours. 2 hours in the middle of nowhere. With the sun beating down and the wind stirring up grit that clung to their skin. They'd settled by the front of the Humvee, the metal still warm from the engine. Liam pulled out his phone. His fingers hesitating before he opened Skype to call his lawyer. Maggie slid closer, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder, a small gesture, but one that felt heavier with every passing second. On the screen, his soon-to-be ex-wife appeared, her face pinched and tired, followed by his daughter Abby, whose eyes wouldn't meet his. Maggie watched in silence. Her grip tightening slightly as she pieced together the wreckage of his past. Sarah had walked away from him, and Abby had followed, leaving him gutted in a way Maggie couldn't fathom. To her. He was solid, dependable, why would anyone let that go? Captain Dumbarton, their platoon leader, later brushed it off as a simple show of support for the folks back home, and sure, that was part of it. But the platoon saw more. Whispers spread fast. By the end of the hour, they all knew Maggie had staked a quiet claim, and they respected it. Liam was one of theirs. And if the captain was good for him, that was enough. 2 hours later, as the tow truck rumbled into view, Liam's phone pinged with an email from his lawyer. He read it aloud. His voice steady but laced with relief. Thanks, Liam. Sorry to wake you, but you made this easier. Sarah fired our guy, threw in the towel, she's full of regret now, but it's too late. I locked in a solid deal for you with Abby, and the others came through with good offers too. I'll send details once it's all signed. Should be wrapped up by week's end, no court needed. So. You with that tall woman? She's stunning, please tell me you are. Liam chuckled, a low, warm sound that echoed in the still air, and Maggie joined him, her laugh softer but genuine. She thinks I'm gorgeous? For real? He asked, glancing at her with a grin. Yep, Lillian's always straight up, he said. She's a fan, Mag. I'll make sure you meet her when we're stateside. Maggie tilted her head, her dark eyes catching the faint light. You'd do that? Why wouldn't you? Liam's smile widened. I'm betting we'll still be together. This isn't some rebound fling, I want this, you know. Is that all right with you? She went quiet, her frown deepening as she wrestled with something inside. It's not a problem, she said finally. Her voice low. I've never done long-term. Never thought I would. But with you, I want it. I don't know why, but I do. You take me as I am, and that's rare. We'll see how far it goes. That okay? Liam's laugh was soft, reassuring. More than okay. I just hope I don't let you down. She snorted, a sharp, dismissive sound. You're saying that because of Sarah? She was an idiot, never deserved you. No real love, no honor. I'm not her. You've got to earn me, but if you do, I'm yours for keeps. I'm curious to see how you'll pull that off. That night, fueled by those words, turned wild and unforgettable, and when Maggie finally called it quits, Liam couldn't recall a time he'd felt so alive. 2 weeks later, he typed out a reply to Lillian. His fingers steady on the keys despite the heat pressing in around him. No camels for me, thanks. I'm glad this mess back home is finally ending. How do I thank you? I don't know what I did to earn your trust, but don't let me forget it. Smack me if I ever drift off, seriously. I can't picture life without you. Did you record that meeting? Could you send me a chunk of it? I wouldn't watch it back home, but out here, downtime drags, seeing it might help me close that chapter. No pressure if you can't. That Amazon is Captain Maggie Dumbarton. She gets what I've been through, had to, since it could mess with her mission. Didn't mind telling her, though. She listens, keeps me sharp. And she's relentless with the conditioning, calls it training, I call it torture. Privately, she's just Maggie. I want you two to meet when we're back, maybe on a beach if things line up. Could wrap this gig up early, 2 or 3 weeks ahead, thanks to Abernathy's crew. Fingers crossed, sands everywhere here. Shower, and 2 minutes later, it's back on you. Won't miss that. Back to work now, love you, always have, always will. Lillian read his email again, the 5th time that day, her coffee cooling on the desk beside her. That first line, no camels, told her everything. He and Maggie were close, closer than he'd admit while the divorce still hung over him. She leaned back in her chair, the creak of it filling the quiet room, and felt okay. She loved Liam, sure. But the shape of that love was blurry. She wasn't jealous of Maggie, not a bit. What did that say? Maybe she just wanted him safe, not alone out there in that endless desert. Maggie. Though, she was striking, all sharp edges and quiet power. Lillian wanted to sit with her, trade stories, see what made her tick. Who knew what could grow from that? The photos Liam sent stole her breath. He'd always been fit, but now? Lean, tanned, muscles rippling under sun-scorched skin in that shirtless shot, standing in the desert. Gun strapped across his chest, staring into the distance with a faint, contented smile. His eyes were bright, his military buzzcut stark against the dunes. He looked good, damn good. She printed the photo twice, one for her desk, one for home. Forwarded it to his boss too, let his old crew see the man he'd become. The other shots were a patchwork of his life out there, Iraq. Maybe Afghanistan, different clothes, different skies. She saved them all, a quiet archive of his journey. For a fleeting moment. Spite flickered through her, send that shirtless pic to Sarah with a barb, look what you threw away. But she let it go. Everything was signed, sealed, waiting only for Judge Merkel's pen. No sense stirring up more ghosts.